Hello everybody, got the commander back in here. At the end of the last video, I went to put it in the barn and the brakes stopped working. I started looking around and well, the coupler down there that runs the hydraulic pump split in half. So it stopped spinning the hydraulic pump, so we had no brakes or hydraulics now. Didn't have power steering the whole time. The front was leaking, the power steering rack, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if it's considered a rack or not, but yeah, I gotta try and get that out of there. I have others from Parts Tractors I can put in, but I was looking at it. The book tells you to pull it up out, remove all the hydraulic lines. I think they say you can leave the radiator in and get it out, but it looks like a real royal pain. But I was looking at it, and well, it's 4 bolts on each side, and this bolt, and I'm pretty sure remove the hydraulic lines and the steering shaft. I'm pretty sure that whole front end I can slide out without disturbing any of the hydraulic system, even though I gotta remove the hydraulic pump again to replace the coupler or fix the coupler that's broke down there. So yeah, stay tuned. We'll see how this goes. We're gonna try to get this thing, actually working how it's supposed to, and not. It's not fun driving it without the power steering. I'll tell you that. It does not steer very easily. Okay. Well, it was a little harder than I was anticipating it, but I got it apart. It did not come out of the frame rails that easily. I had a pry pretty good. I loosened the bolts, these 4 bolts on each side, and put a screwdriver on that side, trying to get the rails spread apart a little bit to get it apart. And the steering shaft I thought would just slide right off of the gearbox, but it struggled a little bit to come off the splines. I had to work at that quite a while to get it off. Otherwise, it didn't come apart too terrible. Bolted it to a tire dolly in the front to support it, and it pretty well rolled right out once I finally got everything free. Getting these tanks past here, they kind of sit down in here, so I had to lift them up and get them over top of this basically to get it out, which they're still hooked to the top rails here, but they're heavier than I think they are, I guess, because they just trying to pull the whole thing down. There isn't much support there at the radiator down to the main frame rails. But now I'm going to see if I can pull this nut off and take the tire bolts out. I think the book says that whole thing slides out then, and then there's 2 bolts that hold this in here. I think I'm going to try to do that. Either I'm going to do that, or I'm going to actually take the whole front off one of my other Parts Tractors and just put the whole other front on this one. I also have the oil pump off. I got to find my new drive coupler for that and put that on while it's apart. I figured it was easier to do that once the front end was off, so I did that last night. I pulled that gear or the hydraulic pump back off, so we'll get that fixed up. Okay, I got the steering box rack out. Figure out why it was leaking. It is cracked. My phone will focus. Kind of see it's cracked there. Got that plug on the top and the bottom. So it got water in it sometime or something and split it open. So that's what's wrong with it. These splines in here have they only can go one way. It has a big spline there that lines up with this thing that has a bearing on the bottom of it. I didn't even know that's how it was made. As you can see, it has the wide spline there that goes up in through all that with a nut on the top holding it in underneath this. Pop that dust cover off and there's a nut holding that. But there's a bearing race there, and then the seal, and then there's also bearing in the top here on that to hold that whole thing with a big nut somewhere I put it. But all that going crap and whatever came out of there. So yeah, I'm gonna go see if I can steal one of these off one of my Parts Tractors out back and put it back together. Okay, I got the steering gearbox in out of one of my Parts Tractors. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt to get to that nut and the bolt. One's in, like that's the bolt going down, and this one's the bolt's going up. They're a machine bolt that I have one sitting over here. They're a machine bolt that it has to fit just right to hold that steering gearbox in place. Took it off when I was taking the one out of the parts tractor. I did leave it all together, the tractor, and most of these lines were already off. I had to take this line off, and this line off, and this line off, and then pulled the whole steering shaft out, which isn't too bad to do. You just gotta take the 2 bolts off here and then loosen the 2 jam screws for the splines on each end, and you can pull that whole drive shaft out without removing the frame rails or anything. It's a little bit, you gotta play with it some, but it does come out. Anyhow, I pulled that out of the tractor through the hole like the book says, but man, was it a pain in the butt. You really had to play with it and play with it. I actually had to remove this top line from here to get enough space to get it up past here and wiggle it and twist it, and it was not fun. That thing weighs like, that whole piece there is like 100 pounds, so it was not easy pulling it out of there. I'd recommend removing the radiator if I was gonna do it without splitting the tractor like I have here. But this is so much easier to pull and put this gearbox in and out. But I got the 2 bolts in now, so I gotta put the steering shaft back up in. There's 2 sets of splines that gotta line up, and then that big nut holds it up on top here through the bearing. So that'll take a little bit probably to get that up in there. But yeah, got it all back together. Got the shaft up in from the bottom. It's basically like doing a wheel bearing with the castle nut in the top here. You just tighten it. There's a bearing in here and a bearing in the bottom. Just like doing a wheel bearing. You tighten it up, back it off a little bit. It's good to go. Put the steering rod, tie rod back on with 2 bolts that go to that pedestal, which on a tricycle tractor, that round pedestal there, the tricycle just bolts right to that, and then that takes the whole weight of the whole tractor, which there's no weight on it now with the way it's designed with the wide front, which I kind of like this wide front versus my older 6000. The stubs are shorter here on the end, so that front of this tractor actually sits down, and with the stock size tires on the back, it sits pretty nice and level. I have bigger tires on my other one, and it still barely just sits level with the big tires on the back with the higher hubs on or higher spindles on the front. But yeah, I gotta work at the hydraulic pump yet. I want to get another set of belts to throw in here, so if I ever have a problem with these belts, the belts are already in here, because you gotta basically remove the whole hydraulic pump and the water for the bottom radiator hose. You have to drain the water and the hydraulic oil to replace these 2 belts on these tractors, which is a royal pain in the ass. I would do one once, and it's not fun. The fan belt you can change that. You can just loosen the alternator and then get this front belt loose, and then you can put the fan belt on, but not these 2 belts that run the alternator and the water pump. You gotta remove the hydraulic pump, and then remove that coolant hose from the bottom radiator to put 2 belts on the stupid things. But yeah, so I'm gonna put an extra set of belts in there before I put the hydraulic pump back on, so I hope to not have to take it apart again after this. The coupler, I'll show you here. This coupler here, split. It's supposed to look like this one, with a bolt going through it. The bolt was going through it and it was tight, but as you can see, it's not very good shape where the keyway was supposed to be there to start with. And then when I was looking at it, if you look, flip this one over. If you look closely, this one must have been ran with the hydraulic pump not spinning for quite a long time, because it was ground down in here that there's no like taper on the edge of this hole. So that's why it broke, I guess, because this hole was bigger than it was supposed to be, so I had to squeeze it tighter to be tight on the shaft of the hydraulic pump. Where if you look at this one, it has a nice taper the whole way around here. So this one should be good to go. And okay, I got the hydraulic pump back in. Put 2 belts there. Zip tied it to each side so it should stay out of the crank down there and out of the coupler and everything, that they'll be there when I need them, hopefully, or hopefully I never need them. Got a new hydraulic line from the power steering. It goes up to the power steering rack. That's was a little bit of a pain to get. It was actually $83 for that one little teeny line. I had to loosen these bolts. I didn't think you could actually get that off without taking the frame rail off, but I loosened the bolts all the way and got it pried out enough that I could get that fitting in and out. But we're about ready to push it back together here. Hopefully it goes okay. I'm by myself, so yeah, we'll see how it goes. I had to reposition the engine stand a little bit, or the engine hoist. I need more lift. I need to lower my chain a little. Okay, I got the engine hoist changed. That chain's a little shorter so we can lift this wire to get it over top of the front nose cone. Hopefully I can push it in now. Closer. Let's hard hitting the engine. Give me a little bit. Okay, got the engine hoist positioned in a different spot. Hopefully do something different. I didn't get it this time. Let's go up higher. Going. Slowly. Okay, it's pretty well together, or in all the way at least. Wiggled the steering shaft back on as I was putting it together. Got the two lines that got hooked up, and that line. And then the wiring for the lights. I should be able to wiggle my fingers in there and get those hooked back up, but otherwise, nothing else connects to the front to the back of the tractor. Just steering shaft and these two lines and the wires for the lights. But I'm gonna see if I can get some bolts started here and then get the engine hoist out of the way. Okay, I got 2 bolts in the front, the front top corner on both sides. The engine hoist is still pulling up on it. As you can see, the back of the engine hoist is off the ground, whereas I can't get the legs in any further with my other stand holding the front of the tractor. This whole process would have been a hell of a lot easier with, my actual engine crane that I have, my brother's been using it for the last 3 months. Anyhow, I'm going to try to jack it up a little bit here and try to get the back holes lined up a little bit. They're just about lined up. Try and get a bolt in here. Look at that. Spinning in by hand. It wants to go back together. Well, I only got like 6 more bolts of them to do and a couple more bolts, top bolts. We'll get her back together here. Okay, got it all back together now. Hooked all the power steering lines up, hooked the drive line or the steering shaft back up to the pump, tightened the jam nut, put oil in the reservoir, which I overfilled, made a little more of a mess. I started it, let it run a little bit. It seemed fine so far, and there's nothing leaking anywhere that it shouldn't be that I see. I'm gonna finish clean up here a little bit, move the 44 and drive it out here and see what we got. See if it's better, see if it steers. Got it out. No leaks yet except for me overfilling the hydraulic oil. So I was pushing the brake pedal. It was squeaking. Here, the bolts are missing for the brake capacitor. It's moving up and down when I push the brake pedal. The whole thing moves up and down. So I'll find 2 bolts to shove in there and then we're good. Okay, I got it back in the shop here, washed it off after filling the hydraulic oil too full. It seems like the power steering's working and not leaking everywhere. It's a little bit of an oil leak coming from the front main and a little bit from the front of the hydraulic pump seal, which I think it was doing that before I was working on it, so it kind of is what it is. I don't know what it all takes to do a front main on one of these, if I can even get a seal, but that probably should be done at some point. I don't know. I'll just let it go for now, see how if it gets worse. But otherwise, drove it around quite a bit. Seems like it wants to do everything it's supposed to do. Still need to find a seat for it. I don't know if all the ones on my parts tractors aren't very good either, so I might have to make something work from something else. Put 2 bolts in for the brake. I don't know why they were out, but they were out. Someone must have needed the bolts or took it off at some point. Well, this was sitting out back as a parts tractor, I guess you could say. But yeah, seems to be pretty good. I'm having some issues with the starter. I don't know what the heck's wrong with it. I took it to the starter place and they put this on new and it was working fine, but now it'll engage and then immediately disengages. I don't know, I guess I gotta take it back or put one of my other starters on. So it's really annoying trying to get it to start and kicks out immediately as soon as it tries to fire. But other than that, probably could find a step for it too, make it a little easier to get on and off. But yeah.
Okay, got it out of the shed. I think I'm pretty well done with it for now. Only problem is now it started leaking oil pretty good in the front pump. But that's gonna have to stay like that. I fixed the exhaust, welded that up where it was leaking, manifold a little bit, put a seat on it finally. Not too bad, it's a seat off of a cab tractor that we had. But otherwise, it's pretty well done, ready to go. Also got a hitch made for it to go to the tractor pulls later in the year. Probably take it to the local fair. I'll post a video of it then once that comes around. But yeah, there she is, all fixed up.